Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be going over my tank build for New World. This is, in my opinion, the best tank build. There's some people who might say there's a better tank build, which of course, they're entitled to their own opinion. But I will just say, if you're a new player or a new tank, this build will be your saving grace. It is probably the easiest tank build to play, and it also is the most versatile with a ton going for it. So I'll go over those things right now. So first off, what are the pros of this build? The one main thing is that you'll be able to survive most things, and you're pretty much invincible with this build, if you set it up correctly. Secondly, you'll be able to hold aggro of huge clumps, and this kind of pairs along with what I was saying in the first point I was saying, which is that you won't die. But like I said, you just won't have any issues with big mob clumps. And that comes down to the fact that you have a Warhammer with pretty much instant cooldown reduction. Why is this? Well, let's first off start by looking at our weapons and armor. So with our sword, we're going to be running Vicious, Refreshing Move, and Hated. Now the first two perks that you really want is probably Refreshing Move and Hated. The other perk doesn't really matter as much. So you definitely want Refreshing Move though, because that will allow you to gain your abilities back as quick as possible so you can do more taunts. Now for your Warhammer, similar situation, Refreshing Move, but instead of Hated, you can run something like Sundering Clear Out, which will apply a 25% rend. This is really good because 25% on an AoE ability is a very strong thing. Now also, if you're running something like Sundering Shockwave, this can apply another 10%, and if you put it on the weapon, it will be, I don't know, I think 15 to 20%, something like that. So you could use either Sundering Shockwave or Sundering Clear Out, but I prefer Sundering Clear Out on weapon, just because the rend is going to be slightly higher. Alright, so onto our armor. We're going to be using heavy armor for everything, and Grit Ward for everything. So every piece of our armor has Grit Ward. Now the perks that you really want to focus are Sundering Clear Out, Sundering Shockwave, Fortifying Shield Rush, and that's it. Those three perks are the only ones that really matter. You could put Fortifying Shield Rush on your shield if you wanted to. That is another option. For the shield itself, by the way, the two perks you really need is Shield Defense and Sturdy. The other two perks, like I said, you could put something like Fortifying Shield Rush on here instead of Refreshing. And then for your last perk, you would probably want a Ward perk. So in this case, we're running Flame Shield Ward, but ideally you want one for every mutation type. So you'd have Flame Shield Ward, Ice Shield Ward, Void Shield Ward, Nature Shield Ward, all of the different mutations. And this will give you just a flat 15% damage reduction, which is very good as a tank. So the one artifact we're running in our armor is the Void Dark Plate. Now I haven't fully leveled this up yet, but when I do, this is what I'll be using. Alternatively, you know, you could just use something else. It doesn't really matter. For example, I'll just show you what I was running before. We have this, which was just Grit Ward, Sturdy Energy, and Refreshing. Nothing too special. But the reason that the Void Dark Plate is so good is because it gives you that 20% increased armor, and that is nothing to sleep on. It's very good. So that is why I think this is going to be the play for this build. Alright, on to jewelry. Like most builds, you're going to be running a protection perk depending on the mutation. In this case, we are showing a Void Protection Amulet with health and refreshing. This one has int, which doesn't matter too much because most of the time, if you have something like Banana Parfait, you can use this and be able to run 320-ish or more con and get away with 250 at least strength. So that's probably what I would aim for. I'll probably just show that right now, so it's easier. So this is what we're going to be wanting to aim for. Is something like this. Now ideally, you would want to take this down, but you can see with magnify, it really screws this up. So we can't really do that. So we have to kind of stick with 320 here. But you want to make sure you get 300 because that allows you to get grit on basic attacks, which is what this whole build comes down to. Because, as we showed before, we are running full grit ward. So that's going to be minus 3% damage reduction while using grit. If you apply that to every armor piece, that's going to be a 15% damage reduction while in grit, which is very, very, very good. Alright, so onto jewelry. Like I was saying, we have our amulet. Now for our ring, we're going to be using Blood Drinker. Now this isn't a requirement, but I would say that this is something that fits this build very well. Due to the fact that we're running so much grit ward, we can get away with sustaining through a lot of those attacks with Blood Drinker. So this will allow us to heal while attacking and give us health. It also has hardy, and yeah, it's very good. You can see I haven't even upgraded this at the kiln yet, so you could put something like a damage perk on here. Maybe slash damage or strike damage, one of those. Or even if you wanted to, actually no, it would probably be slash damage or strike damage, the only two options there. And for our earring, it is Refreshing Toast, Purifying Toast, and Nimble. This is, in my opinion, the best earring for most builds for PvE specifically. So Refreshing Toast, obviously potions will cool down faster. Nimble, more stamina, very good for tanks. Stamina regeneration, sorry. And then Purifying Toast allows you to get out of roots with a regeneration potion. So that is the build itself. We're also running Stone Form, allows us to kind of tank more harder clumps. So this is good for maybe something that has a lot of stuns. You could pop this, and if you use something like Leaping Strike, this ability essentially will have grit when you use that. So if we read it, it says, harden yourself with a layer of stone, cleansing all debuffs, granting immunity to both stagger and crowd control debuffs for 5 seconds. So this allows you to get away with a lot more than you otherwise wouldn't be able to if you weren't using it. So that is the build. There really isn't much else to say. I would probably recommend, if you're running M2s or better, to be using coatings. If you're running M1s or less, then don't bother with coatings. But definitely starting at M2s to M3s, you want to be using coatings. Now generally how this playstyle works is you want to be going in with a Leaping Strike, then using Fortifying Shield Rush. This will weaken every mob in the area. Then you want to pop Defender's Resolve. This will taunt every enemy towards you. Then you're going to swap to your Warhammer. Once enemies are clumped up in a big vicinity around you, then Shockwave. This will apply a rend and a weaken, and it will also stun all enemies. DPS will probably start burning during this period. Then you can use maybe 1 or 2 light attacks to lower cooldowns due to the fact that you have Refreshing Move. Then you can use a... also, I even forgot to show my ability trees, so let's just start with that. Sword and Shield, this is what we're running. Pause the video if you want to see more. And then we'll show Warhammer. This is what we're running. Pause the video if you want to see more. So yeah, we're going to be running these 2 builds, and like I was saying, once you have the mobs grouped up, you're going to be using Shockwave, and maybe 1 or 2 light attacks. Then you can use Armor Breaker to apply another 30% rend. Then you can use another 1 or 2 light attacks and a clear out. And that will stun everything. Then you can swap back to the Sword and Shield, do the 1, 2, 3 attack chain to apply another rend, and then you should be able to start taunting again. And that is the general rotation for this tank build. I don't know if I have gameplay of this, which I'm very sorry about. I would love to have gameplay of it, but I wanted to get this video out. But like I said, this should be understandable. Leaping Strike onto an archer or someone ranged then use Fortifying Shield Rush, then swap to Warhammer once you get a taunt off, then Shockwave, 1, 2, Armor Breaker, 1, 2, clear out, and then you should be able to use a Shockwave again. Alright, so that is the build. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one.